gradual journey into Cabernet Sauvignon magnificence. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and welcome to Maputo, the African city where the heritage of the continent meets the culture of Portugal, and the combination gives this wonderful energy of a city whose streets I've loved exploring over the last couple of days. I'm staying at the Southern Sun in Maputo. Bruce Chapman, who I think was the sommelier on Vasco da Gama's boat, is a wonderful host. He's been very generous, and the food, the wine I've had, has been splendid. But what do you have to look forward to on this particular show? Well, a couple of things I think are really, really exciting. One of them is box wine. And what is Michael Fridjhon, South Africa's greatest, most lauded wine critic, doing drinking wine out of a box? Well, it's wine that's becoming a little more upmarket. It has pretensions to being a fine way of drinking wine. Is that really the case? We taste some of the wine from Pick n Pay in boxes and see if Michael and Tshepang Molisana have got a taste for it. But before we do that, something I've been really looking forward to, there's a brand new restaurant in Johannesburg. It's from Luke Del Roberts. It is the Test Kitchen, but not as you knew it, it's the Test Kitchen Carbon. And I dropped by to check out the food, check out the wine list, and see how it compares to the Cape Town original. Now, as of today, which is a Tuesday, the Test Kitchen Carbon has been open for exactly 1 day, which you'd expect would leave you with a chef and proprietor who's a bundle of nerves, an absolute wreck, and the whole place complete chaos. But while there's certainly plenty of bustle and plenty of energy, Luke Del Roberts looks enormously cool, calm and collected, which I suppose is partly because of the fact that this is almost becoming your new home, Luke.
It certainly is. I mean, it's the home away from home. I still live in Komaki, but I'm up here all the time these days and loving the energy.
It's a really exciting time for you as you bring back the restaurant that had many of us in deep depression when it said goodbye. The Test Kitchen becomes the Test Kitchen Carbon, which is where we are today. Most people think, carbon copy, haha, I see what he's done there. But I suspect it's not quite that simple.
Yeah, exactly that. It's completely not a carbon copy. We've created a space that's quite funky. We've got our own in-house DJ, Sir LSG. The food is as technically kind of accomplished, but a little simpler. And we've kind of made it a bit more Joburg.
In terms of moving up to Johannesburg, I remember we had a lot of conversations during the 26 years of lockdown that we all endured.
Yeah.
And you, as many other restaurateurs, took a real hit in terms of the businesses that you'd spent so many years building up. And there were times when even Luke Del Roberts wasn't sounding his most cheerful, but I get the sense that the energy's back and you're in a really good place once again.
Absolutely, yeah, the energy's definitely back. I feel like we're out of the woods to a certain extent. It was very, very hard. And closing Test Kitchen was a hard decision, but I think it was the right decision. I feel like Joburg's ready for something new, something a little bit funky, a little bit edgy, and I've got an incredible team up here to execute it.
You've also got plenty of support because just across the road, about 20 feet from us, is the Short Market Club and its new home. So you now know the space, you know the area well. People who are coming to join you as you've settled in at the new shop, what can they expect on the menu at Test Kitchen Carbon?
So we're doing a lunch, 2 snacks, 6 course. So this is our first lunch, $9.50. We've got wine pairings. We've got an array of cocktails that have been developed by my cocktail barman, or my head barman, Vincent, and the kitchen, in conjunction with the kitchen. We do tea pairings, and then in the evening it's a 12-course menu paired with some funky sounds from Sir LSG.
And paired with some wine, which has always been, for me, one of the most interesting parts of what you do, because the food ranges from eclectic to, oh my God, what was he thinking? And then it turns out it works really well. But the challenge is often to find wine that can meet up with food that is particularly exotic or cool or different. You've had a rather well-known Zimbabwean who's helped you through the journey. I believe Tinashe's back. What is the wine approach to Test Kitchen Carbon?
So we're doing local wine pairings, obviously, because the local wines are incredible. but we're also doing an international wine pairing where we do anything from Nuit Saint-Georges to Puligny Montrachet, you know, the big names, the big guns, so that people can also experience that. And yeah, Tinashe, I leave it in his hands. He's a genius. He knows how to pair wine. He knows his wine, and yeah, so I'm just very excited to be back in the fold with him.
How does it work between you and him when it comes to the food and wine? Is it simply, right, here's my dish, try and make something work? Or is he ever part of the creative process in, hey, I've got a great wine, what do you think we could do with this?
We have done that a couple of times when we did the Ibn Adi and Luke show, where we drove the food from the wine, so we built food around the wines. But most of the time we develop a dish, and then Tinashe will come up with a couple of suggestions, and we kind of workshop it, you know? So everyone gets involved and puts in their input. And that's what's great fun. It's just good fun doing that.
There's a terrible generic term we use so much in South Africa. It's a food wine, which is a nice lazy way of getting out of talking about it in proper detail. But if we talk about food wine, if you go back to the start of your time cooking in South Africa to where you are today, how much evolution have you seen in South African wine as a partner to great food?
I mean, it's been unbelievable. I mean, food wines, yes, I agree with the term to a certain degree, and there are wines like, so for example, a grassy Sauvignon Blanc will go beautifully with an elderflower dessert or a lemon dessert, which is what we're kind of doing here. But I mean, it's just the array of wines and the quality of the winemakers. It was amazing when I got here 15 years ago, but it's just gone from strength to strength. And those little producers and farmers that are bringing something unbelievable to the table, you know.
Which means they've got a great home here at the Test Kitchen Carbon. I'm going to ask you one of those who's your favourite child questions. If there's a dish at the moment with a wine that goes with us, what for you is particularly electric on offer?
Jeez, I would have to think, because they all excite me equally. You would need to speak to Tinashe about that, in fact.
All right, well, we're gonna get hold of Tinashe. He'll not only making his own wine and star of a great documentary, but is back in-house with Luke Del Roberts and continuing a formidable combination. You've got Short Market next door. You've got now Test Kitchen Carbon here, and gee, it looks lovely. I'm even more impressed than I was expecting to be. But the Luke Del Roberts I know doesn't tend to sit in his haunches for very long. Is there a vision to do more in Johannesburg, to grab, or is it to get these ones up and running?
I think you only have you must do what you can when you can do it, and I'd say we're looking at least 6 months to a year just to bed these down and just keep adjusting, keep listening to the clients, see what people want, and just make it run like a smooth machine, you know.
Final reminder, open for lunch, open for dinner, is that every day?
Tuesday to Saturday lunch and dinner at the moment, and then we will be introducing a kind of Sunday fun day, DJs, performers, pass around food, champagne, cocktails, like just a fun kind of, I'm thinking 12 till 8 Sunday, you know, like a good day out.
It sounds like you are having an enormous amount of fun, but you are running an empire in Cape Town and an empire in Johannesburg. Managing everything, still loving it, still full of excitement?
Yeah, absolutely loving it. I mean, this is always the most exciting thing, opening something new. You have a vision, you translate the vision into a product, and you see it come alive. It's also nerve-wracking because you're nervous about everything at the beginning. I've got amazing people working with me, which is the only reason I'm able to do what I can. You know, on my own, there's no chance.
I think I speak on behalf of all of Johannesburg. I want to say thank you very much for bringing both this and the Short Market Club up to Johannesburg. I know the Short Market has been massively popular. I think the waiting list here is about 6 years at the moment. No. I'm going to try and sneak in at some point.
You must.
But it's lovely to have you up. I can't wait to come around. And thank you for throwing your weight behind Johannesburg and giving us such a cool new space.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
There's a strong suspicion that he's actually twins. He seems to be everywhere at the moment. Test Kitchen Carbon is now up and running in Johannesburg, right across from the Short Market Club. And if you want the ideal way to do them, then go lunch at the short market, have dinner here, and then reverse them the next day round. You won't be disappointed. Now the test kitchen carbon as the Luke Del Roberts Empire in Johannesburg gathers pace. I've been there to eat since we dropped in for that interview. It is an absolute feast in every sense. You've got a queue to join because there are plenty of people on that waiting list, but it is well worth the time to get in there and to enjoy something special from a South African master. There's plenty of specialties here at the Southern Sun Maputo. It's only 40 minutes from Johannesburg, so nip across for a weekend that will include not just this warm hospitality, the elegance and the charm of this little corner of Maputo, but also a pretty good wine list. Not surprisingly, for warm and humid climes, plenty of white wine. Ina Smith would be happy. There's loads of Chenin from people like Anthony Rupert and Ken Forrester on the list. There's also a Portuguese touch, the Vinhos Brancos and the Vinhos Tintos. Just speak to the team and they'll be very, very happy to help you out. This is a place I can see myself coming to on a more regular basis. The ocean's just 20 yards away. You just feel so relaxed, which is not dissimilar to how I felt when I settled in for some box wine. What are we doing drinking box wine? Well, it's entering a new space. Is it the elegant version of wine going forward? A couple of Californian wineries seem to think so. So I sat down with Michael Fridjhon, South Africa's greatest wine critic, and Tshepang Molisana, one of the most exciting young wine writers in the country. We got some box wine off the shelves of Pick n Pay, opened them up to see just how they compare. So this is the headquarters of the Michael Fridjhon Empire. You've seen them before on Dan Really Likes Wine when I dropped by and shamelessly pillage wine from Mr. Fridjhon. But today it's wine that you probably wouldn't normally associate with either Michael, our most revered and celebrated wine critic for almost a century, as well as one of the slightly younger and very exciting wine writers who I get to spend a bit of time with in the form of Tshepang. Guys, welcome. Lovely to see you both. Welcome to the show.
Very nice to see you and welcome back from faraway places.
Indeed. So I have returned and I've actually flown straight back from Mozambique just to come and see you guys and hang out with some celebratory wine. But it's wine that's going to be a bit different because normally when we spend time together, it's new vintages of expensive and cool and cutting edge wine. I've arrived here at Reciprocal today with 3 box wines, as you can see in front of me. And I'm suspecting, Tshepang, as somebody who gets to taste a lot of very, very good wine, box wine's probably not something you have a huge amount of.
No, Cabernet is not my forte then. But I'm excited to try it because, as we've discussed many times, there are so many now that are proliferating in the market, particularly in the premium segment. So although I'm box shy, I think that it's really exciting to be here with both of you. This is good company to try it out with.
Box wine was first launched in the mid-late 1970s. It transformed the wine market in South Africa. In those days, it was only 5-litre boxes, and they went straight into supermarkets, which were relatively recent embraces of wine retail. And it literally transformed where the volumes were sold because it was directed in a strange way, exactly as you observed at Housewives. But it was because you could keep a box in the fridge and tap off a glass or two with your meal. And when you pick up a 5-litre box, in the same way as you pick up, dare one say, soap suds or anything else, in a single movement from shelf to trolley, that's more than half a case of wine. And so suddenly the real volumes, in terms of literage sold, shifted from glass to box and to single purchase decisions, 1 box of red, 1 box of white, and that's the equivalent of a case of wine. Suddenly the marketers realized they'd been talking to the wrong audience because the people who were making that particular purchase decision were shopping in supermarkets and not reading wine magazines.
When's the last time the great Michael Fridjhon had a glass of box wine?
Well, I tasted, in fact, fairly recently because these new 2-litre packages, which seem to have a much better sulfur balance than previous 5-litre packages, and that might also be because you're expected to get through the 2 litres a little bit more swiftly than the 5, although I have some friends who could do them in pretty much the same time before lunch. So I did taste when the new 2-litre stuff was coming out. So I have had a few of these all in the last few months. But there are large gaps between when I last had box wine and when I first had box wine. And I have to confess, it's not an everyday beverage.
All right, well, something different than wine-wise. And we're going to kick off. I'm going to actually give this one to you, Tshepang, because I don't think you've ever opened one of these. So let's see if you can manage it. Bring out your MacGyver wine skills. Some Land's End Sauvignon Blanc.
Actually, that's the way you like it if you're used to pouring beer in Maputo. But I am going to, in fairness to the wine, just get a bit more air back into the glass.
Oh, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
A morning spent drinking box wine with two of my favourite people in the industry. Give us your first thoughts then, Tshepang.
I love the colour. So, I mean, it's a beautiful light lemon colour. And as you said, you know, previously, I suppose, when something comes out of a box, it's got nothing to do with the variety, and I suppose that it's very nice that so far it's ticking all the Sauvignon Blanc boxes. So it's a beautiful Cape South Coast Land's End wine, and we know that the Elgin Valley has become a lot more well known for producing Sauvignon Blanc. So it's really nice that right away got those beautiful green notes coming off on the nose, and it walks and talks like a Sauvignon Blanc, as opposed to a box of something else that's slightly more adventurous.
White wine of uncertain origin.
Yes.
What do you make of it, Mr. Fridjhon?
I mean, I do think there are a whole lot of quite interesting points here. Firstly, you know, Land's End, Cape South Coast, whether it's Elgin, whether it's, as in, you know, elsewhere, all the way down pretty much to Agulhas, are all places which 20 years ago, let alone 40 years ago when box wine was launched, didn't exist as major wine producing areas. And now, from being kind of at the frontier and new, there's enough juice available to put quite exclusive appellations into a box. That's quite good. I agree totally. The colour is luminous and beautiful. I went looking for the telltale signs of too much sulphur, which was certainly a truth of the 5-litre boxes. And this doesn't have it. It's crisp, it's clean, it's elegant. It's not going to win any awards for being the best Sauvignon Blanc in the industry, but you get what you get. It is Sauvignon Blanc, it is pure, it is crisp, and in fact it's quite luminous, easy to drink. And if you'd made more of an effort to chill it, which you hadn't, I suppose, because you were rushing in from the airport, the producer would have been very gratified by the result.
All right, lesson learned. Next time I shall place my box in the fridge and ensure that it is more approachable. I think that's a pretty good report from the both of you. Land's End will be happy with that. Second wine we have, I won't risk your perfectly manicured nails with this one. So this is a rosé. This is from Fleur de Cap. Cheers, guys. Some Chardonnay Pinot Noir Rosé for you from Fleur de Cap. To reverse things this time round, Michael, what do you make of it?
So it is a very interesting thought that because it's a very delicate rosé, any of the kind of angular notes that would have come from too much sulphur, too much acid, too much anything, would be that much more noticeable. The wine, in fact, to be completely honest, is quite bland. But it's bland in a fairly easy drinking kind of way. And there's absolutely nothing in the wine that conveys the sense that the packaging is any different from the way you would ordinarily get it. It's delicate, it's light, it's pure. I have to say it's unmemorable.
All right, Tshepang?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't give South of France, you know. It's, I think it's quite beautiful, first of all, looking at just the box. And then looking at the wine, it is also quite beautiful. The color is absolutely beautiful. It's a nice onion peel color, and I'm already getting signs of some really good acid actually on it. But it isn't particularly intense. It isn't particularly complex. So it does give, you know, that easy-going and easy drinking character. Unfortunately, rosé is actually one of my favorite things to experience. And I think in South Africa in particular, we've been producing some incredible premium rosés. And from the notes that I was taking online, it looks like France is pumping out even more rosé into the world. So I think that the category is growing, and it's unfortunate that this particular rosé doesn't quite rise to the occasion of the others. But looking at, again, if I saw it in a box, I'd be quite impressed with what it is. And that's not a terrible thing to do either.
If we look at the price of this is 150 rand. So that's 60 rand a bottle if we put it in those terms. Does that change your opinion at all, Michael?
Not significantly. It's cheaper to transport. It's got lost packaging cost, but then so does almost any. In fact, all of these wines would be in throwaway glass. So yes, you're paying for throwaway packaging. You're paying, I have to say, for single-use plastic. But having said all of those things, no, I think it is what it is. It's not cheap wine anymore. You can buy cheaper rosé, and you can buy rosés that are no better and a lot more expensive. I think it's perfectly positioned. It's a credible brand, and as you say, looks good in the glass. And if you're sitting on the patio at the pool, you don't want a more demanding rosé than this.
Oh, I think that sums it up rather nicely. And it leads into the third one, which is the one I'm most interested in, because this is a Zonnebloem Cabernet Sauvignon. Interestingly, I did have a look at the bottles while I was at Pick n Pay collecting these. If you buy a bottle of Zonnebloem Cabernet Sauvignon on the shelves at the moment, it is, I think it was the 2020, whereas this is 2019. So you're getting a little bit more, I was going to say bottle age, but box age. And I'm really interested to see what you guys think here, because Cabernet Sauvignon is immediately a grape that you kind of approach with a little more by way of expectation compared to the other two we've had here. So I want to see what the experts think. Cheers.
I obviously am a huge fan of Cabernet Sauvignon. For me, particularly South African and Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon, it's got this, almost stateliness about it. And in fact, quite recently, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about why we make such exceptional Cabernet Sauvignon. And so it's because of those wonderful characters from Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc. So you would be expecting some of those amazing green characteristics. You would be expecting, wonderful, sometimes oak spice or a little bit of oak. Unfortunately for me, fortunately and unfortunately for me, for the price, it does what it needs to do for a cab. Unfortunately, I've known Zonnebloem to do much better.
Can we check whether it is, as Zonnebloem used to be, wine of origin Stellenbosch?
Let us see what it has on here. It is wine of origin Stellenbosch.
So that raises a few questions. So I don't agree with you, by the way, in terms of the quality. I think it's a perfectly acceptable, well-made red wine. It is bland. It is certainly conveys a sense of Cabernet, but not the excitement of Cabernet. So it doesn't have any of the pure cassis notes, those kind of really bright, spicy blackcurrant notes, but it has really well managed tannins. It's smooth. It doesn't have an oakiness to it, but it doesn't have an unoaked feel about it either. It comes from our premier red wine region. It comes from a wine region that is marketing itself as the home of the Cabernet Collective. And you have to ask yourself how they can possibly be putting Stellenbosch Cabernet into a bottle or a box at the equivalent of 60 Rand a bottle, because that can only be done at the long-term expense of the vineyards. You can't farm Cabernet in Stellenbosch and get more than 6 to 8 tons per hectare. And the moment you start running that arithmetic, you realize that the farmer who grew these grapes will never be able to replace that vineyard if his only market is going to be 60 Rand bottles of wine. So for me, I think it over-delivers at the price, but I think it's also being sold at the price of long-term damage to the Stellenbosch appellation, not because it shouldn't be Stellenbosch on the label, but because Stellenbosch Cabernet, which we do think is the heartland of South African red, shouldn't have to be selling its wine at this kind of price point.
All right, we've got the 3 boxes. We've tried them all. Based on the collective, what do you feel about box wine in South Africa, and where do you think it might be going?
I think that's for you.
Oh, no, you're putting me twice on the spot. Having been about a year ago quite rude about the idea of putting big brands into boxes because of the old-fashioned sulfur risk, I'm really impressed. I think all of these wines, you wouldn't know in a million years that they'd come out of a box. And so it is an economical form of keeping, storing, serving, and managing the transport implications of wine. And all of these wines look good, taste good, and deliver or over-deliver at the price point. And that, I guess, is what consumers want to hear.
The pros and cons of delivering wine in a box. Tshepang not quite swept away yet, but perhaps won over just a little. And Michael maybe quietly slipping 1 or 2 boxes into his weekly wine shopping. It's an area that's only going to grow. I think we're going to see more premium wine in this particular space, as we're seeing in California at the moment. So next time you're down at Pick n Pay, browse through and maybe add a box to your usual wine collection, see what you think. And who knows, the way it's going, maybe in 5 years' time, it'll be the Villefontaine d'Oersvein we're drinking instead. So take that as a landmark for Dan Really Likes Wine. Michael Fridjhon drinking box wine. Go out, try some, see what you think. Thanks to Michael and to Tshepang for being part of the show this week. Now, before we go, a reminder of a really important aspect of this month's show. It's our competition, your chance to win a prize from Bellingham Wines. And it's not just any prize, it is a 5-course dinner for 4 people at Le Coin Francais, the culinary magician that is Darren Bardenhorst. It's for you and the group of friends, and the 4 of you, not just those 5 courses, but also a selection of vintage Bellingham wine. It's going to make for a fabulous night out in Franschhoek. All you have to do to enter is jump onto our social media channels and tell us why you should be the person to enjoy this culinary night out in the heart of Franschhoek. That wraps us up from the pool deck here at the Southern Sun in Maputo. It really is glorious. In a couple of moments, I'm going to rip this shirt off and jump into the pool behind me with a cool glass of Sauvignon Blanc. And a big thank you to Bruce Chapman and his team for looking after us here for a few days. That does it for this week. This is Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.